Let's continue practicing with the slope-intercept form. Now you will graph the line using the slope and the y-intercept, as instructed here. So let's start by identifying both the slope and the y-intercept, which you should now have a good grasp on after practicing the previous topic. The slope, you should see here, is the number right before x, which again, if there is no number, there's an invisible one, and you have to take into account this negative. So the slope is -1. Keep that in mind. And as I mentioned in the notes, you might want to think of this as a fraction, -1 over 1, because there is no visible number underneath. It's always over 1 if there is no number already there. So the slope is -1 over 1. Now, let's always start by graphing the y-intercept, as I explained in the notes. -3 in this case. The -3 is -3. So let's start by plotting a point on the y-axis. This is the y-axis. Go down, find -3, plot a point right there at -3. And then from there, we need to use that slope, -1, that means down 1 from here, and then over 1, that means 1 to the right because it's a +1. And that is the graph of this line. Let's try some more. Let's start with the y-intercept. Remember, that is the constant, in this case, -10. Let's start at -10 on the y-axis. Click there. And now let's use the slope, which is 1 over 3. That's the number right before x over here in our equation, 1 over 3. So from -10, we need to rise 1, +1, go up 1, and from there run 3. That means 3 to the right, 1, 2, 3 units to the right. There's the line that starts at -10 with a slope of 1/3. Let's do a few more. The y-intercept, -1. The slope, -1 over 6. Let's start with -1 on the y-axis. And from there, -1 over 6 means down 1 because it's negative, and still to the right. Whoop, let me redo that. Down 1, right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units. And click. There's your line. Go ahead and submit. Let's try another. The y-intercept is -10. The slope is -1 over 5. Let's start at +10. And from there, we will go down 1 because it's -1 and go 5 to the right. Run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, let's stop for a second and think about these problems. Anytime you have a negative slope, what you should notice is that the graph of the line is going downwards or downhill, however you want to look at it, as you run your finger across the line from left to right. So if you go across the line from left to right, you are going downhill if it's a negative. That's one way of knowing right away whether you've graphed it correctly or not. Now, if the slope is positive, that means your line should be going uphill in an upward direction from left to right. Okay, let's continue with a few more. Again, if you're ready to start trying these problems, pause the video for now and come back to it if you need some more examples. The main thing to look out for is keep in mind that anytime you do have a number missing here in front of the x, that means your slope is 1, as we saw in the first example. And anytime you are missing a value after the x or a constant, your y-intercept is 0. That's probably as difficult as these will get, other than some fractions with negatives here and there. Okay, let's continue for those that need more examples. The y-intercept is 6, and the slope is 3. Again, think of that as a fraction, 3 over 1. So from here, you have to rise 1, 2, 3, and run 1 because of that invisible 1 underneath. That's your denominator. The y-intercept is -3 or +3 plus 3, and the slope is -8. So let's start with +3 on the y-axis again. And from here, we will go down 8 because that's a -8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 units down and over 1, always to the right. And there it is. Okay, this should be enough to get you through these problems. So go ahead and continue practicing, and remember to help each other out if you get stuck.